How you doing? Uh, I'm Michael Steele, the content originator for Soldiers for Christ. YouTube has my name on it. Um, First and foremost, I'd like to send out my condolences for the people who have been uh, affected by the recent hurricane storms back to back that seem to be regional at this point. And there are some conspiracies surrounding that. And I'm not at liberty to spread conspiracy through this channel because I believe the Lord is using this channel specifically and about to use it a lot more. But I want to make a point about those hurricanes, a really special point that I think needs to be recognized. And I want to kind of relate what's happening with this hurricane with the recent, also considered to be a conspiracy, COVID. Um, Today is October 10, 2024. It's 7:58 a.m. where I am. I've got a few minutes here. I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about this, and then I've got to start my day. I've already started my day, but not outside the house. The spiritual perspective I want to give you about the storms that have gone through a particular region of the United States. Um, what seems to be like an attack, pretty much. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that believe solely in science and what the abilities of men and scientists are, and how we are the ones that do what we do here on Earth while we're alive, and we think we're in control, but we're not. The spiritual perspective of those storms, connecting COVID also, is that God is in control. That's the obvious point. But the not so obvious, the subliminal points that no one is really paying attention to, is the reason for the storms, the reason for the sickness. It's not just revelation, it's not just biblical prophecy coming to bear on us. It's not just that. There's a manner of sin that is impacting that specific reason. And people won't think of it that way. And they'll want to blame God for doing something to them when it's God's to begin with. Everything in this world, in your lungs, in your body, everything that's around you constantly, all God's. The car you drive, the house you live in, the air you breathe, the sun that illuminates the sky and the moon in the night, the water you drink, the food you eat, everything made by God, even if it was scientifically manipulated. But we'll get to that in just a second. The first storm in biblical history was the flood of Noah. I call it the flood of Noah, but it wasn't the flood of Noah. But when I reference it that way, you know specifically what I'm talking about. Noah spent decades building an ark that would be able to house animals. And I have to correct some people on the measurements of that ark also, because a cubit is a lot longer than people or science or theologians or scholars think it is. A cubit is the same as like a story on a building. So if you take that and multiply it, Noah's Ark at the feet of at the cubits that it was would have taken up 3 football fields. And that's a long boat. There's bigger modern ships are far bigger now. And the sheer area of the ark would have housed easily 2 of every species on the planet, with the exception of water mammals and creatures that swim, that can survive water. You can't drown a fish unless you take it out of water. God knew exactly what he was doing. God always knows exactly what he's doing. And when the people just continue to grow in their evil ways, really just determined to have things the way they wanted to, and kept trying to build bigger and do more and have more power and do more evil and be more wicked, and it just became too much for the Lord to really appreciate. Then he commissioned Noah to build an ark, because he said, I'm going to bring a great flood. Now think about that. If the first storm ever biblically recorded was because of the sin that overcame the earth, how much more are every storm or earthquake or disaster or, you know, physical anomalies such as COVID, though may be scientifically manipulated? What if the Lord ordained that scientific manipulation specifically to get the result of the sickness or the disease or the storm that he wanted to see have an impact on us? What if he wanted to turn our own weapons against us? Do you think the Lord is going to use fighter jets in Revelation times, in the Revelation period? Do you think that God is going to use men with firearms? It's possible, but not likely. The Lord has his own army. He doesn't need us for anything. We need him. And the fact of the matter is, we don't take life seriously enough. We think it's a game anymore. We've got all our nice technology and our fancy vehicles and airplanes and houses. And, there are people out here with more money than they know what to do with, which is really totally unnecessary. We create our own destruction and then complain about it when it happens. We bring the problems we have individually on ourselves and collectively on ourselves. Have you not noticed the way these elections have been going? They're constant battles between people for power and who's going to be the mightiest race on earth, who's going to be the smartest race on earth, who's going to be the richest race, who's going to be the most powerful race. Do you think that has nothing to do with what as it is written in the Bible? That's God making himself known. There's going to be civil unrest. Look at the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel, as soon as men collectively started getting together to build this massive tower to be able to climb into and reach into heaven with very little effort, all they had to do was just work together. What did God do? Let us confound their language so they can barely understand each other. So they struggle to work together. Let's cause a little bit of division and then establish the end from the beginning. When Jesus came in the flesh to walk among us, he divided everything. When Jesus came, his whole purpose was to divide. His whole purpose was to separate. To pretty much establish the separation. But the separation hasn't happened yet. But the goal is to separate. To give you an example, you see who the people are that are actively trying to be proactive and productive and helpful and assisting after the damage has been done by these horrendous hurricanes. You see the people trying to come together and unite when, oh no, the threat of death is imminent. We're all going to die. Oh, we barely made it out. Do you think COVID was looking for a skin color or was simply just targeting broke people? Do you think that God used these storms simply to target a specific race of individuals? Or did he go after a specific type of person? Not even related to skin color whatsoever. God doesn't have bias, only spiritual. Only spiritual. And I am pertaining to bias. That is pertaining to bias. God has spiritual bias. I'm not a good man. I've been talking to God about this a whole lot lately. We take life for granted. And people don't want to hear things like this. They don't want to listen to stuff like this because it's just too serious. It's not entertaining enough. It's scary. It's too informative. There's too much real information in there with the truth embedded in it. They don't want to hear it. But they'll go scrolling through TikTok to look at the next TikTok sensation, the next influencer. And you'll copy and paste on Facebook somebody else's prayer that they posted on their wall. This says copy and paste if this is what you agree with. But that's not from your heart. Just because you agree with it and copy and paste it, God wants to see what you got. What are you going to do? God doesn't want you to be copy and paste. God's not up in heaven with a cookie cutter machine printing out human beings to all be the same. We all have different quirks, faults. We all have different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things. We practice things differently. We approach situations differently. But everything we do, we're taught first. We don't just come out of the womb knowing it. We have to learn it. Our parents teach us first. And then we learn from the people that are around us that we're allowed to be in contact and communication with. That's why some people, you think they have no knowledge at all. It's better for them not to have any knowledge at all except for what they've known out in the middle of nowhere. Because as long as they're not involved in the stuff that's going on out in the world, they've got one mind, their singleness of heart in there. They're not trying to be involved with everything that's going on all the time. I have to say they're the smart ones. You look in the cities right now, debauchery, kids killing kids, conservative people buying their kids guns, and their kids are carrying the guns to school and blowing away their classmates. Liberals are just doing whatever they want to do because they think they're entitled to a certain amount of freedom and being able to do it. But that's a problem on both sides. And that's just a political aspect. Taking life for granted. I see people doing it every day. And it's sad because when you have the people that you say you love and you care for that are alive and breathing, that you won't even take the time to pick up the phone to call, to check on, to see if they're okay. And then when they happen to pass away, you're sad about that. Were you not concerned with them before they passed away? How much attention did you really pay? Or were you just wrapped up in your own little world? That's the same concept as the storms that came and hit Florida. They may have been scientifically manipulated. I have no idea. We humans, we can't create anything. Everything that's already in creation has been created. The only thing we can do is manipulate it and make it do something we want it to do, or try to form it in a way we'd like to see that it can be used. And if it's the will of God, it'll turn into something that we want to use. God allows it. It's his creation. He can do whatever he wants with it. He can make whatever molecule bond with whatever atom that he sees fit, because that's the will and the power of God. That is God. Then he gave us Jesus Christ, so we'll know that meekness, not weakness, but meekness, peace beyond all understanding, love for one another, helping people who don't have much at all get what they need. Why is it that the same scenario as it is when you have a relative that is alive and breathing that you don't ever check on, don't ever want to talk to just because you have a little difference with them or whatnot? The same thing applies to these storms. Why is it that you wait until a disaster happens before you want to work with your neighbor? Why do you have to worry about who's in the White House? What about who is in your house? Look in the mirror. It's sad, but it angers me to no end, because I watch people day in and day out complain about stuff that they never do anything to change. That's sad and angering at the same time. I see people getting up in front of congregations and preaching the gospel without ever even revealing their own faults. They act like they've always been a perfect Christian with a halo on their head and never done anything wrong. Never taking responsibility or holding themselves accountable. And they're the people that are supposed. God said that if you're in front of a congregation and you are in charge of a church, you're held to a higher standard. You're held to a higher level of accountability because it is you that is in leading, you that is in leadership. Why does it have to be a disaster that happens that brings people together? Why does it have to be a pandemic that's wiping out life every time it comes across a large group of people before we even start working with each other? The change doesn't start in politics. The change starts with the person in the mirror. Train up a child in the way he should go. And we got parents teaching their kids that, oh, you can have whatever you want, do whatever you want, no discipline whatsoever. We're supposed to have discipline. The root word of discipline is discipleship. Disciple. You can't be a disciple if you're not disciplined. People talk about the Great Commission like it was some kind of a movie. No, the Great Commission is what God charged his disciples to do. Go and make disciples. He didn't say go and build a church and stand in there and wait for them to come to you. He said go and make them. That means you need to go find them. Where are they? You need to go out. When Jesus was here, he walked around. Wherever the people gathered around him was church. Even the people that didn't deserve him got his attention. Every day. Every single day. And the saddest part and the whole root and the whole moral to this whole thing is that we take life for granted so much until things start happening, until bad things start to happen. Instead of preparing yourself, you wait until the bad thing starts to happen and then you want to do something. You can't wait until something's completely destroyed before you try to fix it. You see the problem coming, but you ignore it. I'm nobody. I'm more specifically, absolutely nobody without God. I've made my share of mistakes. I've told my share of lies. I used to be a heavily fornicating adulterer. What good did that do me? None of it did me any good at all. And you know what? I've noticed since I've committed to walking with God and putting him first in everything that I do, all that started to change in my life. But you have to take it serious. You can't just say, oh, Jesus, forgive me, and then go back right out there and do the same thing you're doing before. It starts at home. If you're not teaching your kids how to follow Jesus, they're not going to follow Jesus. They're going to follow you and whoever else you let follow, or whoever else you show them who to follow. Sad, man. I haven't made a video in a while because I'm watching people pay more attention to the stuff that they agree with and that they like and that they want And they don't understand that this is the way life has always been for us humans. It doesn't matter how industrious and how technological and how more advanced we become as a human race. If we're not advanced as humans in the way we think by the renewing of our mind and not conform to this world, then there's nothing changed about us. We just become technologically advanced with our ignorance. Now we have a way to share our ignorances amongst each other, and it's spreading like wildfire. Do you think that everything that God uses, the devil doesn't have access to? Rest assured, if God can use it, the devil can too. And the devil will try to use it. And if you're ignorant, he'll have access directly to whatever resource he needs to bring you down and destroy you, if you allow him to. Those storms, COVID, sickness, disease, all that has come from sin. Undealt with. You know, you don't deal with the stuff. You just think that, oh, well, I haven't talked about that, I haven't seen that, and I haven't done that in a long time, and I'm just going to forget about it. I don't do that anymore, and I haven't talked to Jesus about it. But as long as I don't talk about it, I don't think about it, I don't mention it, it's okay. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Wrong. It's still there. You think the Lord's eyes are blind to what's going on? You just got to remember something. Everything is a choice. You want to be part of the LGBTQ community? It's a choice. You're not born with it in your DNA. God knows exactly who he made a man and who he made a woman. This abortion stuff, it's a choice. It's not, the politicians aren't making people go get abortions. The people are choosing to do it. And the doctors are choosing to provide the service. Who do you think started it in the first place? The very people trying to stop it now. I say it's not what a person did then, it's what they're doing now that makes a difference. But now it's supposed to be different than then. If you're doing the same thing you did then, now nothing's changed. You're not making a difference at all. You're doing the same thing you've always done. There's no difference in that. But if you've changed, you've evolved, you've learned some lessons in life, and you've decided to take up a different mantle and change the kind of person that you present to people that you can see in the mirror and humble yourself, try it. See if those storms and those problems don't start to dissipate in your life. Jesus said, resist the devil and he shall flee from you. He shall flee from you. It's like he's not going to stick around if he know he can't get to you. People want you to think, or these ministers out here, they're so indoctrinated themselves, they're passing along the indoctrination. They want to tell you how good and powerful and wonderful God is and how good he will provide for you and won't he will and this and that. And he's a righteous, mighty, delivering, prayer answering, promise keeping God. Yes, he is. But he's also a terrible, mighty, righteous, delivering, prayer answering God that will totally destroy you if you don't get it together. That's the part they're not teaching you. They don't teach God's wrath, just the goodness. My advice, you look at these storms, these sicknesses, and the way you live in your life. What have you been doing? Do a self-evaluation. Think about it. Do yourself a favor. Learn to humble yourself for Christ's sake, so that you can know the goodness of God all the days of your life. Because if you don't understand the wrath of God, especially after the things that you've seen been happening throughout the world over the past decade, then God will show you his wrath. And then it'll be too late. Don't wait till it's too late.